This is Amplify You, the podcast about you discovering your message and broadcasting it to the world. If you're a coach, author, or speaker, you'll want to tune in. If you're looking for the best return on your time investment to get your message out to the world in a bigger way, we're giving you full access and behind the scenes look of how we're running our podcast, how our clients have found success, and what you can do to launch your podcast today. The world needs your message. I'm Michelle Abraham, the host. Join my family as we unleash your unique genius and find the connections you need to launch your adventure today. Join us and let's get amplified. Hello, Amplify You family. Michelle Abraham here, your host. Today, I am bringing you a behind the mic interview with one of our very own podcasters, Alysha Myronuk. So, hey, Alysha, how are you?
Hi, Michelle. Thank you so much for having me here today.
You're welcome. So this behind the mic interview, we're interviewing Alysha all about her show, That's Myrony. So Alysha's show is fascinating. I love this show so much because it has such an interesting story to a Myronic story to it of the making of it, but also just the things that Alysha's bringing to this world are so cool. So Alysha, why don't you tell us a little bit about the show, how it came about, and what you're on a mission about.
Okay, well, Myrony is a word I've created, which is another word for sign or synchronicity. It's the crazy coincidences that happen in life. But I actually say Myrony has its own definition because it's synchronicity in motion. We may see a sign, but then there's an action we can take when we trust our inner knowing. And so I really like to say, discover Myrony and your inner superpower. But how I discovered this word was that I kept seeing these signs in the strangest way over the years. In my first episode, I really go into the story, but it all started when my dad was terminally ill, and I ended up getting engaged in 6 days where he passed away 1 week to the time that I got married. But the Myrony is that this happened. I got married in the same hospital I was born in, and I actually got engaged in this hospital also.
So crazy. A very sentimental hospital to you, obviously.
yeah. I mean, what are the odds of that, But it was, but then the day before, everything was falling into place in 6 days. Everybody's like, how are you doing this wedding so fast? I mean, it wasn't a small wedding. It was like 50 people. And the dress was the dress of my dreams. Shoes were last pair of my size. Like everything was just falling into place. But then the day before, it was torrential downpour. And everybody's like, what are you going to do? And that's when I said, if there truly is a God, he will not take this away from my dad. And the next day was one of the most beautiful days I ever witnessed. Mm-hmm. And from that moment on, I recognized these signs. And then my life really, took a turn. And again, that's all in episode 1. But the Myronies, these signs that would show up would almost be like this encouragement of keep going, keep going. Eventually, you're going to figure out why everything has happened. And so that's really, it's all thanks to Myrony That's Myrony was born.
I love it. I just think it's so amazing that you have a word that happens to be a new word that you've created. And it's going to be, I've been in groups where people say, that's Myronic or that's Myrony. And, Alysha, you made that word up. There's no denying it. And there's no way anyone can take that from you because it's part of your last name. So,
and that's what was so funny is how I came up with the word is people, when I used to be in sales, would be like, how do you say your name? And I say, it's like ironic, but with an M. And then I just started adding, there's a lot of Myrony in my life, and they get a little chuckle. And then I remember one day when it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is a universal word for everybody. It's my irony. But I like to say, take out the I, because it's not about I, it's about we and something so much greater. So Myrony is literally the opposite of selfie. So in addition, creating the movement for people to share their Myronies in addition to their selfies on social media. So we have a new form of content that we can connect to.
I love that because those are the connections. Like I am a people connector, so I love those connections. I love those connection stories. I love like being able to, hear those stories of how people got there. And I remember sitting in one of our other clients, Damien Norman's class, one of his classes, he's teaching one of the universal laws and about, how following all of those, ironic things that have happened throughout your life and putting them together, how like, if you didn't do this, this wouldn't have happened. And if this didn't happen, that wouldn't have happened. And it's just, it's amazing to go back and see just the pathway that everyone's life ended up going because of certain things that showed up.
Absolutely. I like to say, we connect the dots. And then I also say, follow the spiritual breadcrumbs.
The spiritual breadcrumbs, that's cool.
The spiritual breadcrumbs, because sometimes it literally is the smallest crumb that's going to have the biggest significance. But when you see those little tiny things, but you really you'll get this like gut feeling and be like, there's something around this. Like, what? Why am I can't even express. I guess, for someone bringing this word to the world, I would have to have a lot of good stories. So my stories are absolutely crazy. I got to admit it, and anybody that listens to the podcast will hear my crazy stories in addition to my guest crazy stories, because it's all thanks to Myrony that I've connected to all my guests so far in most cases, actually. Which I just find it so amazing. It's almost like that, field of dreams. If you build it, they will come.
Yeah, it's true. And it's like interesting how they all like there's a web between all of them too.
Oh, it gets
so interesting.
And that's where I love to say it's the divine design that interweaves us together, because it's not just weaving. I mean, it goes so deep on so many different levels, and it's so powerful. And that's why I really say this is like a superpower when we can tap into it.
I love it. So how can we tell, or like what, I guess my question is, how can we, if someone's listening to this and they're like, what are they talking about? I don't know what they're talking about. How can they turn into like paying attention to these things? What are some clues or some ideas?
Well, you'll start seeing something like over and over again. It could be a number sequence. I see a lot of it on freaking license plates. I get more messages in the sense of, I actually like to say it's almost like, people up above is like clapping, like, yay, good job. You're figuring it out. Like, keep going.
Yeah. I feel like we're like on this treasure hunt that they're like,
oh, absolutely. I think sometimes, yeah, it's a scavenger hunt for sure. But then, sometimes it may be a song that comes on and you're like, that really sounds like that's for me right now. Like our loved ones from above. There's a beautiful book by Laura Lynn Jackson called Signs, the Secret Language of the Universe, which I find very funny because that's Myrony. It explains how, we really are given signs. She's this amazing psychic medium. So, it's just pay attention to what your inner self is saying, what your soul and your heart is saying, because it's not guiding you wrong.
We always see dimes, so out of all the coins that you can find on the ground, right? My family we always find dimes everywhere. And my Nana collected dimes, right?
So I was just about to say,
I'm like, why wasn't it a quarter or a penny? Like, it's always a dime.
That's her way of showing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's this whole section.
Yeah. When we notice that she, when we find a dime, and it's crazy. Dimes in the craziest places.
I love that, because I have to say they like getting creative. I mean, they really do. Like, I know that the license plates I see when I see them, I'm like, it's not statistically possible to see that many of a same number sequence, or the number sequences that make sense for myself. So you really want to know what resonates with you, and then just pay attention to it, but then really trust those gut feelings. When you trust your inner knowing, it really is there to help you. How many times have you gone against that inner knowing and be like, why did I do that? So stop doing that.
Yeah. Or like, you think of a friend they haven't talked to in a long time. You think of them a few times, but you don't reach out. And then all of a sudden you hear of something like, that they've passed away or something. And it's like, well, and, I should have reached out, or, something like that. It doesn't have to be that drastic, but I know that's always, every time now, after having that happen a few times, I'm always like, now when someone comes up in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm going to reach out and talk to that person, or I'm going to reach out to that person or see how they are.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then, and then I also help people tap into, it's funny, our mutual friend, Deanne Riendo, will give a little shout out to Deanne, but an amazing Akashic record reading she actually, one of my readings said that I'm kind of you could call me a Myrony muse. I help people, be able to connect to their Myronies, but then I also help people who feel blocked in life, that I can show them from a higher self perspective of why we choose what we go through in life. Because I will say at times I've wondered why my higher self is so truly crazy to me, but I believe it's just so I can have these great stories to share.
Yeah, exactly. That's great. And you also mentor people, and spiritually mentor people, people who are looking to get more clarity in their life. What else? What kind of other people do you help?
I mean, really, like the biggest thing that I try to do is help people who just feel lost. Because I was so lost for so long after, I dealt with losing both my parents. I, went through a really difficult divorce. I lost the ability to have children. I just recently lost my nephew to suicide. I was suicidal. I've dealt with so many things. And, so I really know how to connect with people in whatever it is that they're hurting with. And so I just want to help show the tools that I learned over the past 15 years. However, I can do it in a matter of months versus the years it took me.
Right.
It can even be weeks in some cases.
Shorten down the process, guys. Don't worry.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank goodness. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So that's amazing. So if you're feeling like you need some support in that, definitely reach out to Alysha. She's an amazing wealth of knowledge, and she's got so much, so many interesting stories and things that have really helped her get through some tough times. And she's there to help you if you're feeling like you need some help and feeling a bit lost. So
yeah, I'm an intuitive, and what I also want to say is that I'm giving guidance when I'm talking to people as to the messages that they need to hear in that moment. So it's kind of I say it doesn't come from me.
Team working with her.
Yeah, exactly.
Our spiritual team is on board.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. So I want to talk about your podcast for a minute. So tell us a bit about the podcast. How long has it been out for? What are some of the best things that have come out from having the podcast so far? I would love to hear a little bit more about your podcasting journey.
Oh boy, the podcasting journey has been so interesting because it's been out since, it was funny. I was trying to launch it on August 22nd of 2020. And the first episode ended up coming out on August 21st. And what's really funny about that is 821 was the name of the restaurant that I ended up buying with my then husband. But August 21st was the day I say I challenged God, because it was when this torrential downpour was happening. And then August 22nd was when I got married. And so why I did August 22nd was really just in memory of all these Myronies. That was where it really first started. But I found it very Myronic that the episode got out on August 21st.
They wanted to bring 821 back in.
Had to bring that one back in. So the journey has just been so incredible. I mean, it really, I can't even, because I never know actually what I'm going to do. There's no, I don't really plan it out. I had one theme where I did the Soulmate series in September, and those stories were just so inspiring and incredible. And then it just keeps growing from there. But I truly believe that I'm just kind of being divinely guided to who's meant to share their stories. And it's really the only criteria somebody needs is to have a really great Myronic story. And but they got a lot of competition at this point because the stories are just We're just getting crazier and crazier.
Yeah, exactly. And you're 25 episodes in. So if you want to hear 25 really crazy stories, go and listen to Alysha's show. The show is getting traction. It's starting to get more downloads. And it's also starting to, your movement of your hashtag That's Myronic or That's Myrony is also getting traction because I'm hearing it in other places other than just from you and I.
Yay!
So that's awesome. So everything you're doing is working. And what about the relationships you've built like through this podcast? Have you known the people before the podcast, or is that because of the podcast that you've met some of these people?
I knew the people before I started doing the podcast or like the early episodes, but in some cases not really well. So I got to know people more. I am now doing more where I'm meeting the people through the podcast. And that is so interesting because I never know where the stories are going to take us. So I'm very excited for the ones that are coming up very shortly.
Awesome. Well, we can't wait to hear more of your crazy Myronic stories. And it's so, they're just so amazing. So, and they just bring like how magical this whole world is. So it's just so neat to see what's emerging. And so, Alysha, on your podcasting journey, what's next for you? What's your big ask for today?
Well, my big ask is definitely check out the podcast, subscribe, like, and comment so that way can get more visibility, out there in podcast world. And, really just start using the word. If you like the word, if you like the concept, synchronicity is a great word, but it's really long. Most people don't know how to spell it, but it really is, it's literally the opposite of selfie. So let's share our Myronies and not just our selfies on social media, and use the hashtag That's Myrony or Isn't That Myronic? You can use the word Myronistic instead of synchronistic. It's just, fun, modern, and a new concept we can all share.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Alysha, for being with us today. It's been so fun to dive into That's Myrony and the background and the story behind the show with lots of interesting stories.
Well, thank you so much, Michelle. This has been so much fun.
You're welcome. All right, Amplify You family out there. Don't forget, we have a free podcasters toolkit that you can go and download. Go to bit.ly// podcast toolkit. So go ahead and download it there. There's lots of goodies in there, and you'll see another interview with Alysha in the podcasters toolkit as well, where we deep dive a little bit deeper into more about That's Myrony and the story behind it as well. So thank you guys today for being with us, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. Go out there and be safe, have fun, and amplify your voice.